Have you ever heard of the hero so terrifying that even all the demons are afraid of him? He is not Dante from Devil May Cry. He is not Doomslayer. He is not Tanjiro. I'm talking about a figure from Chinese legend, someone most people in the West have never even heard of, Zhong Kui. Zhong Kui is one of the most fascinating characters in all of Chinese mythology. A tragic scholar who became a god, a protector whose frightening face drives away evil. For centuries, families painted his image on their doors to keep ghosts away. He's been called the King of Ghosts, the Demon Queller, the Monster Hunter before Monster Hunter even existed. And now, he's about to step into the global spotlight as the star of Black Myth Zhong Kui, the follow-up to Black Myth Wukong, the game that proved Chinese mythology could rival Greek gods and Norse sagas in epic storytelling. But here's the thing. To really appreciate what game science is doing, you need to understand the legend behind the name. Because Zhong Kui isn't just another character. He's a symbol of fear, justice, and tragedy, all rolled into one. So today, we're going to dive into who Zhong Kui really is. Where did his legend come from? Why did he fade into obscurity? And why is he the perfect hero for a modern dark fantasy game? Like so many great legends, Zhong Kui's story doesn't start with triumph. It starts with tragedy. We go back over 1,000 years to the Tang Dynasty, one of the most glorious eras of Chinese history. This was a time of poets, painters, warriors, and the imperial exam system. In ancient China, if you wanted to become someone important, you had to pass these grueling state exams. They tested your knowledge of Confucian philosophy, your writing, your intellect. Pass the exam, and you could rise from a poor nobody to a powerful official. Fail, and you have to wait for another 3 years to retry. Zhong Kui was brilliant. By all accounts, he was destined to succeed. He studied, he prepared, he had the talent to become a top official. But there was one problem: his appearance. Legends say that Zhong Kui was born with a frightening face. Dark-skinned, bushy eyebrows, a thick beard, eyes that bulged with intensity. He looked monstrous. When the day of his exam came, Zhong Kui performed flawlessly. He should have passed with honors, but the emperor, repulsed by his looks, refused to grant him the title. Imagine studying your entire life, proving your genius, and then being told, "Sorry, you're too ugly for the job." Humiliated, furious, and heartbroken, Zhong Kui took his own life on the palace steps. His brilliant career was over before it even began. But death wasn't the end of Zhong Kui's story. In fact, it was just the beginning. The legend says that the emperor later had a dream. In that dream, Zhong Kui appeared, no longer a failed scholar, but a vengeful spirit wielding a sword. He hunted demons, captured ghosts, and swore to protect the empire from evil. The emperor, shaken by this vision, declared Zhong Kui the official demon queller, giving him divine authority even in death. So, from a tragic scholar who never got his chance in life, Zhong Kui was reborn as something greater. A god who patrols the underworld and slays the forces of darkness. It's a story of injustice, of transformation, and of redemption. And it set the foundation for one of the most unique heroes in all of mythology. Now let's talk about how Zhong Kui looks, because trust me, you'll never confuse him with anyone else. Zhong Kui isn't a radiant angel or a handsome hero. He's terrifying. His face is painted black, his beard thick and wild. his eyes burning with anger. He carries a long sword, ready to strike down any spirit that crosses his path. Sometimes, he's even shown with an entourage of little demons, the very creatures he's captured, now serving him as unwilling minions. And here's the fascinating part. In Chinese culture, his ugliness is his strength. He's supposed to look scary. The idea is simple. If his face is frightening to demons, imagine how terrifying it must be to humans. That's why, for centuries, families placed paintings of Zhong Kui on their doors during the Lunar New Year. These images acted as a kind of supernatural security system, keeping ghosts, ghouls, and bad luck away. He became one of the most famous door gods, protectors of the household. In a way, Zhong Kui is like the Archangel Michael from Christianity, slayer of demons, but with the terrifying visage of a hellboy or a dark fantasy character. He embodies the concept that sometimes you need a monster to fight monsters, and that's what made him such an enduring figure in Chinese folklore. Zhong Kui wasn't just a myth told in books. For centuries, he was part of everyday life in China. During the Dragon Boat Festival, people would hang Zhong Kui portraits to ward off evil spirits. His image appeared in operas, in temple paintings, in family traditions. Parents would tell their children stories of how he saved his younger sister from a villain's forced marriage, and more. In these stories, he wasn't just a demon hunter. He was also a tragic but caring figure. Someone who turned his suffering into protection for others. To put this in Western terms, imagine if Dracula wasn't a villain, but a protector of villages. Imagine if Hellboy was worshipped not as a comic hero, but as a household guardian for centuries. That's the kind of cultural weight Zhong Kui carried in China. But as times changed, and as China modernized, Zhong Kui slowly began to fade from everyday life. His face no longer appeared on as many doors. His stories became less known among younger generations. He became a relic of the past. So, what happened to Zhong Kui after centuries of being the ultimate demon slayer? Well, like many mythological figures, he didn't disappear, but his role changed. In the last 100 years, especially with modernization, fewer and fewer households put Zhong Kui's portrait on their doors. Temples stopped telling his stories. Children weren't growing up hearing, "If you don't behave, Zhong Kui will come get you." Instead, he slowly faded into the background of culture. But, and this is important, he didn't vanish entirely. Zhong Kui started popping up in movies, TV shows, and games. For example, in 2012, Hong Kong actor Bobby Ao Young starred in The Legend of Zhong Kui. It was a monster hunting drama series where each episode featured Zhong Kui dealing with different demons. For some viewers, especially kids at the time, it was terrifying. Zhong Kui's wild eyes and demons could fuel nightmares. But it was also one of the last times Zhong Kui had a proper starring role in mainstream entertainment. Since then, we've seen Zhong Kui show up occasionally, but usually in strange ways. Sometimes he's buried under CGI-heavy blockbusters that look flashy but lose the soul of his myth. Instead of being the terrifying yet protective exorcist, he's turned into a generic action hero. Games? Same story. Zhong Kui doesn't get much spotlight. The most famous version right now is probably In Honor of Kings, a MOBA where he's redesigned into a stylized fantasy exorcist. Cool, yes, but still far removed from the tragic, terrifying cultural figure. It's almost ironic. Zhong Kui is a figure with centuries of storytelling behind him, but modern entertainment treats him as a side character, a cameo, or just an Easter egg. He's become more like a quest-giver NPC than a hero of his own saga. And that's why Black Myth Zhong Kui feels so different, because it's not just a cameo. It's not just a reskin of a fantasy archetype. It's a promise to put Zhong Kui back into the spotlight in all his terrifying, tragic, heroic glory. Here's the real question. Why Zhong Kui? Why now? First, Zhong Kui is timeless because he's relatable. Think about his origin. A brilliant man who failed not because of his talent, but because of bias and injustice. Who hasn't felt overlooked or rejected for reasons beyond their control? His rage, his despair, that's human. And instead of fading into bitterness, he transforms that pain into protection. He turns personal tragedy into public strength, something that makes your spine tingle. And yet, he's on humanity's side. That contradiction, terrifying yet protective, is exactly what makes him unforgettable. Second, Zhong Kui represents something sorely missing in modern gaming, a truly unique cultural hero. Doomslayer, Geralt, we've seen demon slayers before, but Zhong Kui isn't just another sword-wielding hero. He's centuries of folklore, superstition, art, and theater condensed into one terrifying figure. He's the kind of character who can open the door for global audiences to explore Chinese culture in ways they've never imagined. And finally, in a world where horror and fantasy are colliding more than ever, Zhong Kui is the perfect bridge. He's not a shiny knight. He's not a superhero in spandex. He's something darker, something primal, something that makes your spine tingle. And yet, he's on humanity's side. That contradiction, terrifying yet protective, is exactly what makes him unforgettable. So let's talk about the future. If Black Myth Wukong was game science's way of saying, we can make a game that stands alongside many 3A games now, then Black Myth Zhong Kui is their way of saying we can tell stories the world hasn't seen before. Think about it. Wukong, the Monkey King, is famous worldwide. He's been in anime, movies, comics, you name it. But Zhong Kui? For most Western audiences, he's a blank slate. That's exciting. Because it means this game can introduce a myth that feels brand new while still being deeply rooted in Chinese tradition. Imagine a dark fantasy world where you don't play a pretty chosen one, but a terrifying exorcist whose very face makes demons tremble. Imagine boss fights against grotesque spirits inspired by centuries-old Chinese folklore. Imagine exploring ruined temples, haunted villages, cursed mountains, places that feel familiar if you've played horror fantasy, but completely new because they're drawn from Chinese myth instead of European. That's the potential of Black Myth Zhong Kui. It's not just another action RPG. It's a cultural bridge. It's the chance to show global audiences that Chinese mythology is just as rich, just as terrifying, and just as epic as anything from the West. And for Chinese players, it's a homecoming. It's a chance to see a figure from their grandparents' stories reborn. Not as a joke, not as a side character, but as the true protagonist he always deserved to be. He's tragic, he's terrifying, he's heroic. He's the demon slayer who looks scarier than the demons. He's the protector you didn't know you needed. And soon, thanks to Black Myth Zhong Kui, The whole world will know his name. So, next time someone asks you, who is Zhong Kui? You'll know the answer. He's not just a myth. He's not just a character. He's the ghost slayer, the gatekeeper, the tragic scholar turned eternal guardian. And now, he's ready for his comeback.